I'll never forget that Friday evening, rolling back into my driveway after a long weekend at my sister's wedding up in Oregon, just craving my couch, a cold beer, and some bad TV to unwind. But as I grabbed my keys and headed to my front door, something stopped me cold. My solid black lock, the one I'd put in myself last year, was gone, replaced by some flimsy nickel-plated thing that looked like it came from a dollar store. Taped to the door, flapping in the breeze, was a fancy-looking notice with a seal from the Maplewood HOA, claiming my house was now under their temporary management for ongoing violations. My key didn't even fit, and as I stood there, locked out of my own home, I caught Sharon Miller, my next-door neighbor, peering over her hedge with a smirk that said she'd been waiting for this moment all day. Let me back up. I'm Ethan, a graphic designer who bought this place in Oak Ridge 2 years ago because it sits just outside the Maplewood HOA's grip, 3 feet outside. To be exact, a fact I triple-checked with a surveyor before signing the papers. I wanted the quiet streets, the neat lawns, without the HOA's rulebook telling me how to live. Sharon, though, she's the self-crowned Empress of Maplewood. Or at least she was until they booted her as president last spring. Her house, right on the HOA line, is a shrine to beige siding, regulation mailboxes, and grass clipped so precise you could measure it with a ruler. Me? I painted my place a warm sage green, stuck a mailbox shaped like a vintage radio in my yard, and let my grass hit a cozy 4 inches. To Sharon, I was a walking insult to her perfect little kingdom. From the day I moved in, she made it clear she hated my vibe. She'd slip neighborly tips into my mailbox, and signed, of course, nagging about community aesthetics. When I parked my van with my freelance logo on it in my driveway, she'd snap photos like she was building a case. My fairy lights? Too festive for her taste. I left them up till February just to see how red her face could get. Things got spicier when I put in a little herb garden out front, basil, thyme, a couple of peppers. Within hours, Sharon was at my gate, waving a binder thicker than a phone book, ranting about approved landscaping. I leaned on my rake, smiled, and said, "Sharon, I'm not in your HOA. My property, my rules." She huffed, muttered something about considerate neighbors, and stomped off. I added gnome with a cowboy hat to the garden for good measure. Her campaign ramped up after that. Fake violation notices started showing up. Official-looking letters citing my non-compliant fence or unregulated bird bath. I thought they were hilarious at first, pinned them to my fridge like badges of honor. But Sharon wasn't playing. She'd call the city about code issues, only for inspectors to roll their eyes and tell them my place was fine. She tried roping in neighbors, but most of them, like Mrs. Carter across the street or Jim, the retired teacher, quietly cheered me on for standing up to her. The week before my trip, she lost it when I had a backyard cookout and some burger smoke wafted over her pristine deck chairs. She stormed over, yelling about environmental harassment. Yeah, that's not a thing. And when I laughed, she went dead quiet, her eyes narrowing like a cartoon villain plotting her next move. I should have known she was cooking up something big. So there I was, staring at that new lock, the fake HOA notice crinkling in my hand, my blood boiling as Sharon watched from her yard like she'd won the lottery. This wasn't just her usual nonsense. This was breaking and entering a line I never thought she'd cross. I pulled out my phone, called the Maplewood HOA, and got Lisa Tran, the real president. I read her the notice, and she sounded like she'd just choked on her coffee. "Ethan, your house isn't under us. You're outside our zone, and we sure as hell didn't change your locks. Sharon hasn't been president since we voted her out after she tried to ban Mrs. Carter's wind spinners." Lisa paused, her voice tight. "Did she claim she's acting for us?" I said yeah, and Lisa promised to dig into it. My next call was to 911 because this wasn't an HOA squabble anymore. It was a crime. While I waited for the cops, I snapped photos of everything. The lock, the notice, Sharon still lurking like she was directing a play. I called a locksmith, too, who said he'd need my deed to prove I own the place. The police showed up first, 2 officers who listened as I explained, showing them my ID, my property papers, and that ridiculous notice. They inspected the door, took their own pics, then headed to Sharon's place. I couldn't hear much, but her arms were flailing, her voice rising, then fading as the officers' faces hardened. One was scribbling notes, The other kept shaking his head like he'd seen it all, but not this. The locksmith got there mid-interview, checked my deed, and started on the lock. Cheap junk, he muttered, pointing at scratches. Whoever did this botched it. Looks like they learned from a YouTube tutorial. In 15 minutes, I was back inside, but the relief stopped short when I saw what Sharon had done. Red violation stickers were slapped everywhere. My walls, my fridge, even my couch, citing unauthorized paint, disorderly furniture, you name it. On my kitchen table, she'd left a stack of photos, every room in my house, each marked up with her neat handwriting listing infractions. She'd walked through my home, touched my stuff, invaded my space like it was her right. I felt sick, violated, like my sanctuary had been ransacked by a clipboard-wielding maniac. The cops came back with Sharon trailing, her smirk gone, replaced by a mix of outrage and panic. I was upholding neighborhood standards, she snapped, glaring at me. Your negligence drags us all down, Ethan. Someone had to act. The officer cut her off, asking how she got in. She claimed she'd sent proper notice, that taped-up paper, and my failure to respond gave her permission. I laughed, bitter. Permission to break in? That's a new one. The cops weren't buying it. I filed charges right there, breaking and entering, trespassing, impersonating an HOA official. Lisa, on a follow-up call, said the HOA wanted to sue for fraud, too, since Sharon was tarnishing their name. Sharon's face went ghost white as the officer listed the charges, her voice shrinking to a whine. I'm protecting our community, she kept saying, but sounded desperate, like she was trying to convince herself. The next week was a blur of paperwork and rage. I had to catalog every sticker, every photo, every fake notice she'd sent over the years. My fridge collection was now evidence. I gave statements to the police, the HOA's lawyer, and started piecing together how deep Sharon's scam went. She'd forged HOA letterhead, faked signatures, even set up a burner email to harass neighbors who dared to hang unapproved wreaths or park an extra car. The HOA dug up complaints from others she'd bullied, like Jim, who'd been fined for a non-compliant porch light, or Mrs. Carter, who nearly cried when Sharon demanded she remove her late husband's rosebush. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Sharon was out on one of her patrols, marching a nervous group of neighbors around, pointing at violations with her trusty clipboard. I just got a restraining order 100 feet between her and me or my property, and 2 officers agreed to serve it in style. I called Lisa, who showed up to set the record straight. We walked over, and I swear the air shifted when Sharon saw us. Sharon Miller, the officer said, loud enough for the block to hear, you're being served a restraining order. Stay away from Ethan and his property. Her clipboard hit the grass, her mouth gaping. Lisa stepped up, calm but cutting. You're not president, Sharon. You haven't been for months. You're done pretending you run this place. The neighbors froze, eyes wide, as Sharon sputtered. This is absurd. I'm in charge here. Lisa shook her head. You were voted out, and now you're facing charges for fraud. That's when the dam broke. Mrs. Carter piped up, voice shaking about the rosebush. Jim admitted Sharon had threatened to tow his car for parking too long. A new couple, the Lopez's, said she'd try to fine them for wrong blinds. It was like the whole street exhaled, finally free to call her out. Sharon's face cycled through shock, fury, then something like fear as she clutched the restraining order and slunk back to her house. The legal hammer dropped fast. Sharon faced charges for breaking and entering, trespassing, fraud, and impersonation. Her lawyer tried to spin it as good intentions, but the evidence was a slam dunk. Emails showing she Googled is changing locks illegal. Fake letterhead she spent $900 on, even a knockoff HOA stamp she bought online. She knew my house wasn't hers to touch, knew she had no power, and did it anyway. The trial peeled back her whole operation, and it wasn't just me she targeted. She'd been terrorizing Maplewood for years, banking on fear to keep folks in line. Her real estate job tanked, too. She was a property manager for a local firm, and word of her arrest spread like wildfire. Good luck selling homes when you're known for breaking into them. They put her on leave, but everyone knew it was over. At sentencing, Sharon sat there, deflated, a shadow of the woman who'd lectured me about my gnome. The judge didn't hold back. 6 months in jail, 2 years probation, $25,000 in fines, 600 hours of community service, and, the kicker, a lifetime ban from any HOA in the state. When the gavel fell, Sharon gasped, her eyes darting around like she expected someone to save her. "This is injustice," she wailed as they let her out. "I was saving this neighborhood." Her voice bounced off the courthouse walls until the doors shut, and that was that. Back in Oak Ridge, things changed. I peeled off those stickers, tossed her photos, and my house felt like mine again. The Maplewood HOA, under Lisa, started cleaning up, new rules to stop rogue board members, even a neighborhood picnic to reset. Mrs. Carter replanted her rose bush, Jim got a brighter porch light, and the Lopezes hung their wrong blinds with pride. Me? I added more herbs to my garden, swapped my gnome for one with sunglasses, and kept my fairy lights up year-round, just because I could. But Sharon left a mark, not just on me, but on all of us. A few weeks later, I found a note in my mailbox. No signature, just a scribbled thanks for shutting her down, with a tiny sticker of a radio mailbox. I smiled, wondering who it was. Maybe Jim, maybe Mrs. Carter, maybe someone I'd never met. It got me thinking, how many people out there are fighting their own Sharon, some petty tyrant who thinks they own the block? I don't know, but I know this. When you stand your ground, keep your proof, and play it smart, you can take them down without losing who you are. So what do you think? Was I right to go all in, or should I have let Sharon's nonsense slide? Drop a comment with your take. Have you ever dealt with an HOA bully like this? Share your stories, because I know I'm not the only one who's faced a Sharon. Hit that like button, subscribe for more neighborhood dramas, and let's keep talking about what it means to fight for your space and win.